Hello and welcome to Productivity Nerd, a podcast all about getting shit done, hopefully in an elegant way that doesn't leave you too broken. In our crazy worlds, we're all about balancing the need to work enough to make ends meet, enough not to annoy our bosses, but also enough that we feel like we've done enough, which can be a whole different psychological and emotional ballgame, along with the human need to rest and stay well. Plus, on top of that, we'd quite like to enjoy ourselves, maybe just a little bit along the way, spending quality time with those we love. I, for one, love hearing about how people get that balance and work more efficiently so they have more time to do the things that they love. Hi, and welcome to Productivity Nerd. It's great to have you here. Today, I am talking to my friend and colleague, Claire Stibbon. She is going to be chatting to me about all things meeting preparation, getting ready for them, why you should have them, why you should only have them if you know what you're having them for, and also some squirrels and some elephants. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Productivity Nerd. I'm your host, Kathy, and today we are talking about a topic that's painfully familiar to most of us, meetings, specifically how to prep for them so that they're actually productive and not just glorified diary clutter. But today I am joined by the fantastic Claire Stibbon. Claire is an executive coach, a master facilitator, and a boardroom veteran. Claire runs Conversations That Count, and she describes herself as having the patience of a saint, which I totally agree with, except when she's being tortured by bad meetings. So together we are going to unpack what really needs to happen before a meeting begins so that you walk in clear, calm-headed, maybe a little bit smug. And of course, meetings are a wide-ranging thing, right? From a wander down to Costa and having a chat on the way to a full day formal secretariat, highly complicated board governance thing, and everything in between that, which is most of the meetings we have. But hopefully some things about meetings remain universal, whether they are on the hoof and informal or whether they are very, very formal. Tortured by bad meetings, Claire. Bit dramatic, maybe? Does it matter that much?
Yeah, actually, because bad meetings lose you good people.
Ah,
With their attention, I actually left a job because of a bad meeting. It wasn't an unpleasant meeting. It wasn't bad in that way. It was so not fit for purpose that my levels of frustration were such that I came out of the call and just thought, I'm done, and actually resigned that evening. The cost of bad meetings to the global economy is in the hundreds and billions of dollars. And that was back in 2019 when Doodle, they're into meetings, did some research. The wasted time when you're in things that are just a soul sucking experience where nothing is getting done. And actually, even, that one meeting that really just was so bad, it took them 6 months to replace me. And in the time that they hadn't replaced me, they had to bring in some quite expensive resource to cover the stuff that I was doing and to cover the people management elements. So that 1.5 hour meeting, which should have been a 2 hour, much better meeting, and I'd probably still be there, was actually a pretty significant. It wasn't the only reason I left that organization, but it was definitely the icing on the cake.
yeah, the straw that broke the camel's back, as it
I
were.
am the camel in that example. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I left a job because of langoustines once, which might be equally as mental, but totally feel your frustration. So the first thing about a meeting is, should you have it at all? Great meetings, much as I am an EA and I love the logistics, that's not what meetings should start with, right? You need to clarify the purpose and why are we doing this anyway? So you shouldn't just say team meeting or board meeting or birthday party. That's a category. It's not
Yeah.
a purpose. So talk to us about meeting purpose.
So you've summed it up pretty well, actually. And if you're not clear on why you're meeting, then it shouldn't be a meeting. If you're not clear on why you're meeting, it probably shouldn't even be an email unless it's an email to somebody going, do we need to talk about this and what's the point? There's a great book. I have some props, so I'll share this. I really recommend if anybody's a reader, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. She does quite a lot of conflict negotiation, among other things. She writes brilliantly about purpose. But yeah, the category, we do tend to go, oh, it's a team meeting. That tells you nothing about what you want to get out of it. And it can be quite difficult to dig into it. So sometimes you have to zoom out and go, right, okay, what is it we're actually trying to do? Are we talking about chemistry, or are we trying to save the world from the scum of the universe? I know those are quite big, different examples, but you can zoom out and go, what is it we're really trying to do here? Or you can zoom in, and I sometimes get brought in to facilitate like a team away day, those sorts of things. And when you ask people about what, well, we just want to get together in a different environment, well, that's still not a purpose. That's just a category. Well, why do we want to do that? Well, maybe we've got some difficult stuff to talk about and we think it would be easier to do it without interruptions. Okay, still not really there. I was in a meeting years ago with the marketing and R&D teams in a pharmaceutical organization I was part of, and the R&D team presented pretty well everything that they were working on. And the marketing manager walked out at the end of it and said, well, we can't sell any of that. And that was just how they left the room. Cue horrified gasps from everybody, and I think my jaw dropped. But actually, that's a really good example of, do you know what? R&D are R&Ding stuff that marketing are telling us there's no need for, and the relationship's really bad and everybody's getting entrenched. So we want to focus on that relationship. That's a really good purpose. It's uncomfortable and you could disagree with it. Whereas if you say, we want to have an away day because we kind of feel like everybody needs to get on, you'd have to be start raving mad to disagree with that as a concept, but it's pretty hard to then nail that down and say, right, okay, what are we going to do? As if you know what you need to talk about is the bad relationship between commercial and R&D, well, that's your purpose. And then how you frame that meeting and how you prepare people for that meeting, because there might need to be a bit of jiggery pokery to get both sides to that kind of meeting, really is useful. And it also helps you understand what might be on the agenda. And it pretty well guarantees you won't turn up to a meeting where there isn't an agenda.
Yeah.
And the other thing that that does is if somebody, as I'm also prone to doing, if somebody gets really interested in something that's off topic, we can go, that's great, but we're here to talk about this and we need to park that. And there's a concept, Stephen's principle, there's a concept that you hear talked about in sport, and it came from rowing, which is about, will it make the boat go faster? And if it doesn't make the boat go faster, we won't do it.
Yeah.
So when you've got clarity of purpose, that's about making the boat go faster in that example. You can come back and go, if this isn't about that relationship, then we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so it just helps some of the scope creep. So that's where it was Priya Parker that somebody sent me this book. I was very grateful. It was Priya Parker that taught me about category versus purpose, and it was a real light bulb moment of sometimes we think we've got to a purpose, but actually we've made a nice stab at tarting up our category.
Yes, we've just renamed and recolored our categories beautifully in Outlook terms, but it still isn't a purpose behind the meeting. And if your purpose was, which I know, for example, one of our clients, they do have team away days. In fact, probably several of our clients do. And whilst they will talk about some stuff, really all of that stuff is done in day-to-day life. So the only reason to pay all the money to have a team away day is effectively to build relationships. Would you be saying, well, that's not enough in and of itself unless you put some structure behind that? Or like, how are you going to make that happen?
So I like to think about, how do I want people to feel at the end of this? And that's whether I'm having a one-to-one conversation with somebody about their performance, good or bad or indifferent, or whether you're thinking about something like those relationship building activities. So if you're running an away day because you want people to get to know each other better, and you want to build maybe a bit more of a sense of camaraderie. And particularly in a hybrid world, sometimes we just want to hang out with the herd. We don't get to be physically near people. I think that's a good enough purpose. What might well sit behind it is, do you know what, if we know each other better, we can work together better. And if we know each other better, when things get sticky, we have a greater sense of sort of regard for each other and care for each other because we've actually spent a bit of time getting to know each other. And then, and sometimes what happens when you go, right, we're going to have an away day and we want people to have a great time and we want to have great experiences. Somebody goes, great, we'll go axe throwing, which I wouldn't be averse to at all. But I'm going to hazard that's a relatively extrovert pursuit. And also for people, or rage based, who knows, but
Yeah, I was trying not to go there, but yes, I know we have talked
growing
about
slash
going to.
anger management sessions. Uh,
Yes,
but for some people, actually going and doing something that's physical and might require that demonstrate that you've got a decent aim would actually put a massive amount of pressure on them. So I think there's something then when you're going at how do we get to know each other better and how do we do that in a way that works for everybody that we're trying to bring together. And then that might mean that the array of things that you do and the way that you approach them is then different.
yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of principle. I know in the past, some of our clients are quite sporty. And if I went to an away day and they said, great, we're all going to play rounders, I've got a dodgy hip. I'm going to hate that. I mean, not to mention all the flashbacks of sports day and, all that kind of stuff. And for some people, they don't want to go out drinking. And that's not a great way for them to socialize. So we have to think about all these things, don't we, to make it inclusive for people who are introverts and extroverts, people who don't particularly enjoy going out partying the night away, people who don't want to be sporty and doing tug of war or rounders or football or whatever other horrific thing people might decide is a good idea in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I'm a fan of sport, if not a talented sports person. I'm more prone to injury than winning things at the moment. So, sporty stuff for me, I can get quite into that, or definitely active stuff, because I get very fidgety if I have to sit down in a meeting all day long. But yeah, for a lot of people, that brings us such a degree of performance pressure. And also the late night thing, or we'll do this and then the real fun happens when we hit the bar afterwards. Apart from people that don't drink for whatever reason, and there's all sorts of reasons,
Yeah.
cultural and otherwise, that mean people don't drink. It also really means that people who have caring responsibilities are excluded. So if the good stuff doesn't really happen till the end of the formal stuff, you're creating a slightly two-tier attempt at trying to make sure people have a good time.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible to have a good time without alcohol. Uh, I know that's an unfamiliar concept for many of us.
No, it is. It has definitely been done. Yes.
So, it's just then thinking about actually how can we be a bit more creative and how could we potentially get more people who are going to be the recipients of that away day involved in thinking about what does good look like for
Yeah.
us. And that also means you've got a greater chance of people turning up because some people will be so excited about an away day, and some people would rather stick pins in their eyes
Yeah.
because, it's forced socializing with a large group of people. And for some people, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
So I think the more that you can, but in that sort of context, the more that you can get people involved in crafting the meeting, the away day, however, the gathering, the more chance you have of them actually being up for it, and also them potentially influencing other people who might be feeling a bit uncertain about whether they really want to turn up to this thing.
Yeah. And thinking about getting people there, when we're thinking, perhaps we've slightly gone off the rails of moving the boat faster on away days, but and the social stuff, but thinking more about specific meetings, to get work done, actual work. Um, how would you make the decisions to who should be invited, sort of optionally or compulsorily? That's not a word, you know what I mean?
I think it probably is a word.
I just made it up.
So who has information that you need in that meeting? who makes decisions and needs to be there. So what's the meeting for? If you have to decide something, then I think you also need to understand how the decision is being made, because some decisions, and it's not a bad thing necessarily, some decisions are made by diktat, what the boss decides.
Yeah.
Some decisions are made still by the boss. The boss consults, takes all views into account, still decides. Some are democratic and you might vote, and some are actually we all need to agree on this before it can be a decision. So if you're not really clear on even how you're going to make the decision, that doesn't make it quite so easy to understand who to invite. So if you need a decision, are the people who can make that decision in the room? If they're not, are the people who can take the recommendation to whoever's going to make the decision in the room? Because sometimes you'd have a meeting, right, where you go, right, we need to present 3 options to board. Let's us decide what those 3 options are. Board will be the ones that pick one.
Yeah.
So again, real clarity on that purpose. If the outcome of this meeting is we have got 3 proposals that we'll take to board on our commercial strategy, whatever. Right, we need who can give input to that. You're going to need some commercial people in there. You're probably going to need some people that can, other than commercial people that talk about numbers. I'd be thinking about your finance and your planning people in that kind of context. I can't immediately think of who else might be there. But if your commercial strategy is also predicated on we're going to have this brand new product and nobody in R&D has told you it takes 20 years to develop that product, I've seen weirder things happen.
Oh, yeah.
Then so it's actually who's got information that we need and that we can use, who can make decisions, and if there are people are there who don't do either of those things, are they people that then go out and influence afterwards? So if I'm invited to a meeting and I don't understand why I'm there, it's relatively hard for me to contribute,
Yeah.
and I'm costing money, and I'm not necessarily adding anything to the great debate. And while I'm in that meeting, if I'm paying attention in that meeting, I'm not getting on with all the work that I could be doing if I wasn't sitting in a meeting I didn't need to be part of. So there's a massive cost of having the wrong people
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, absolutely. Just inviting people for the sake of inviting people. For
I
sure.
I don't know if it still exists, but I saw there was a period of time where you had everything was a such and such a canvas, and there used to be a meeting model canvas, and there was a sort of stakeholder management canvas, and they were all, if you I might go and Google it after this conversation, but they were all kind of Creative Commons free to access, and they were quite helpful in going, right, what's this meeting about? Who needs to be in this meeting? Why do they need to be in this meeting? Have we told them when in the invitation why they are in the room? So just quite useful set of questions to work through so that everybody knows why they're there. You've got much more incentive to read the paperwork if you think somebody's going to ask you a question about it because your opinion is going to be sought, than if it's one of those where 3 people are doing all the talking and 10 people sit around dumbly wondering, am I ever going to be asked to speak? In fact, am I the right Claire Stibbon? Did they think another one was coming that knew more about this stuff?
Yeah. And you mentioned there prepping for meetings. You're a fan of pre-reads if there's information that should be digested ahead of time.
Yes, I am a fan of pre-reads.
You hesitated.
I hesitated. I was smiling to myself slightly because I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago. I was running a bit more than that. I was running a workshop for them, and I said I'll get the pre-work out 2 weeks ahead of time, and they said great because we've done something before and we got the pre-work on the morning of the workshop, and that's not pre-work, that's just work. So pre-reads, yes, with enough time for people to actually do the pre-reading.
Yeah.
I'm fairly pragmatic though. I have, in the past thought, I don't know how many people have actually read this stuff. let's take 20 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for everybody to, and I'm going to do the air quotes thing, refresh their memory on the paperwork and actually just spend 20 minutes reading it so that everybody's read it. So that's fairly pragmatic, but it doesn't work brilliantly for people who are reflective and need a bit more time to think. So you could give me something, I'll read it, and I'm a fast reader, I'll read it in 10 minutes or so. I'm reasonably confident to then start to talk and to think by speaking about what I think this means. There will be other people who need much more time. So yes, pre-reads, expect them to be read, be pragmatic. Uh I'm actually quite a big planner around meetings, but one of the reasons I like to plan is so that I understand where I can deviate from it when everything just goes a bit pear-shaped. I was part of an organization that was acquired by a much bigger organization, and we had a week-long kickoff on a major project that was happening. So there were 70 of us in the same room for an entire week. And one of the things that still haunts my memory was the woman who stood up and had an hour's slot in this meeting, and she had a slide deck. And I can't even remember what the topic was about now, but I remember that on the the footer of her slide deck it said slide 1 of 256.
Oh, no.
She had an hour. She had a damn good try at getting through 256 slides in an hour. I was about ready to jump off the nearby scaffolding. It was insanely pointless. So I would say nobody needs to see 256.
No.
You have 7 days or an hour. But if you've got something that's going to come into the meeting that is a 60 slide deck, that to me is a report. PowerPoint's not the right
Yeah.
to do it.
Yes. And yes, I keep forgetting I'm on video, by the way, and pulling lots of faces. I realise, and I have realised that actually I was in a meeting fairly recently that was meant to be an hour, and overran, and then overran a bit more, and yeah, my face probably by the end of that, these three people went, yeah, we could see you were underwhelmed, and you sort of went from underwhelmed to absolutely livid in the space of about 15 minutes. But it is, you have to have, if you are responsible for presenting or facilitating or whatever, you have to have a grasp on what realistically you can fit in, right? People just seem to think that more is better, and actually less is better because then you can expand on the bits that people need more clarification on. Whereas if you rock up with a 270 slides, even for a, I don't know, half day meeting, that feels nauseatingly awful. But as the person in charge of the meeting, you have to use a bit of common sense and go, right, okay, I can probably get through 5 slides because
Yeah.
we're going to want to talk about them. Otherwise, you're presenting. Is that a meeting or is that a, it's kind of a meeting, but the aim of the meeting would be to give people information. And I'd question whether you need to get them in a room to do that always,
Yeah, I
like a
have
training session.
I have occasionally slightly mischievously start, if I've got something to present, and I will use, if I'm doing something all day, I do a lot of workshop facilitation. If I'm doing something all day, I might have 10 slides, I might use three. Sometimes I'll use 10, but I have slightly mischievously in the past put slide 1 of 256 at the front of the slide deck, and then commented on it later, and just to see how many people had noticed and whether the sinking feeling was real for them. I do it with purpose, not just for mischief, but it amuses me.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, we've sort of moved on to the area of preparing yourself, whether you are the facilitator, the owner of the meeting, or whether you are an attendee. It is still vital that you come prepared to that meeting, which obviously involves reading the stuff, if
Yeah.
there is stuff to be read, and and what else would you think? Say, for example, you are a participant rather than the chair.
So one of the things that I see happen a lot in organizations is that we put a meeting in that will go from 9 till 10, and the next meeting goes from 10 till 11, and the meeting after that goes from 11 to 12, and so on ad nauseum. Even in an online world, it's genuinely not possible to switch from one meeting to the other in a nanosecond. Certainly, you might be able to do it on screen, but you're not able to do it up here. So I think there are also some things to think about, which are how do you create space so that people can arrive to a meeting in a decent state. Some organisations will start meetings at 10 past and finish them at 5 to, or do them in those blocks of 45 minutes, which I quite like. So I think there's something about, you don't want to be turning up to a meeting kind of skidding in sideways, not sure that you've got all the right paperwork, haven't had a wee, actually didn't even have a time to get the coffee, which is probably a bonus now that because you can't have a wee because there isn't time for that. So let's not load up with coffee. So I think there is something about how can I arrive in this meeting in a decent state? And often that is about not rushing. There's also something which you don't always have the luxury of doing, but if I know that this meeting I'm having at 9 till 10 is, I don't know, maybe it's a conversation about supplier performance and the supplier aren't going really well and it could get heated, or it could be one of those that takes a bit out of me. I probably don't want to go into something really meaty straight after that. You don't always have the choice. You can do things like breath work and a bit of box breathing and some of those things that actually just get you into a better physiological state. But yeah, do I know why I'm in the room? Has somebody sent me the right details for the room? Because again, sometimes now you get meeting invitations and they just say Teams, and somebody's forgotten to put it's not a Teams meeting, it's actually physically in room one.
I thought you were going to say somebody's forgotten to add a Zoom link, Claire. Not that
I
that
can't
happened
imagine they
for our
ever have
recording.
things.
Where am I going? Oh, hang on. Bear with, caller. Bear with.
But I was actually invited to something in uh which I later found out was in Reading. I got the invitation and it just had a room, and the organization that I was working for had more than one site. And I thought, I don't recognize that room. So I rang somebody else that was going to be at the session and went, where is this? If I come into, and they were, oh no, you're in the wrong building. In fact, you're in the wrong city. And it was
No.
a 2 hour drive. I mean, physically I wasn't because I'd checked like a couple of days before, but it was a difference between half an hour from where I live, half an hour into Milton Keynes, or 2 hours into Reading. So sometimes when people are running things where they normally only run them for internal people and you've got external visitors, they just forget about some really basic things like letting people know where they're coming.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
so
yeah. I
oh,
mean, we're all EAs who run the podcast, so we're pretty used to that kind of thing. But it is remarkable when people, particularly in big organisations, assume that everybody is into, or like, if you are Microsoft and you assume everybody is part of the same connection, you have to make sure that people who are invited have what they need in terms of stupid stuff like bring your passport. You need ID to get in the front desk. Like, put that on the meeting invite. If you've got an external person coming in and they may not have been before, put helpful information like that in the invite, right? That says security are going to need to check your passport, allow 10 minutes, and make sure you bring some ID. Those kind of things, when people are just churning them out without much thought, can be a real hindrance because someone's going to rock up 10 minutes late, having ransacking their car for a driving license or whatever. Got a plan.
and thankfully, I was able to wangle my way through, but I've been in that situation, and in the end, was sort of forced to show them my LinkedIn profile and go, look, you can see this is me. Uh, I've clearly written loads of nonsense over the last however many years on this platform. It's the only thing I've got. You can see my Facebook feed, but there's more nonsense on that. It was the only way I could really go, look, this is who I say I am.
Yes.
If they'd been that, thankfully wasn't a kind of government level of security, but I could easily have not been able to get in to that building.
Yeah.
Definitely didn't sort of add to the milk of human kindness that I was feeling about just getting in somewhere and okay, right, now I've had to deal with this, and I thought I'd
Yeah.
take 10 minutes to brush my hair and think about, do I remember who I'm meeting and all of those things, which is
Yes.
I tend to, before I start anything, have a little bit of a mental countdown to before I walk into the room or before I walk into the Zoom room
Yeah.
on actually what's going on. Working for myself now, I'm no longer in quite such a tyranny of other people putting meetings into your diary 8 hours a day. So it's definitely one of the things I don't miss about the corporate world is feeling at the beck and call of your calendar rather than in control of your own destiny.
Yeah. Which, and a lot of what we do for the people we support is that human thing of going, in practical terms, right, I'm changing Outlook settings. So your hour meetings are only 50 minutes and your half hour meetings are now 25, and that is how it's going to be. Or doing that thing where you manage somebody's energy and go, do you know what, that's a really tricky conversation. I'm going to give you a half hour break after that to go decompress, get a cup of tea, whatever. Um, because actually, you can't switch your brain instantly from, like you say, difficult conversation with somebody to, oh, let's plan the Christmas party, or, it's just difficult. It's difficult. Or worse, the other way around, going from mistletoe, holly, and turkey to then having to give somebody some really horrific news. You need a bit of thinking time ahead of that to get yourself in the right headspace, know how you're going to approach the conversation, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, having somebody manage your diary is obviously massively helpful for that kind of thing as well. And my favorite one though, this will make you laugh. One of our clients had a step challenge, a global step challenge. They're all trying to get in loads of steps. And they actually asked their VA team. So we used to be, they're on like a 4 floors of a building. And we used to be really careful when we were booking meeting rooms. We'd be like, right, okay, well, that one's top floor. Next, I won't have them running up and downstairs all day. I'll just make sure they're all, 1 floor above and beyond. And we're not talking about loads of meeting rooms. I think I've only got about 10. But during this step challenge, everyone's like, no, no, I want top floor, then I want basement, then I want top floor, then I want basement, because I want to get my steps up.
Brilliant, brilliant nudge of a brilliant description of behavioral nudges as well to
Yes.
do those sorts of things. I know I've told you this story before, but I used to get so fed up with how disrespectful people were of my diary, and I would block time out for thinking time. And in that particular job, I would say almost every day I was dealing with something that was fairly gnarly and somebody that was going through quite a difficult time or an organization that was going through a difficult time. And that isn't something I would describe myself as quite a good busker. That's not something you can busk your way through. And you need recovery and you need to be able to strategize about how you're going to do everything. And it just didn't happen. And people would put meetings in my calendar when they were already meetings. So the chances of not getting a meeting on the thinking space
Yeah.
section slim to
Non-existent.
non-existent. So the last Tuesday of every month, I blocked it out completely. I worked in a role where lots of my meetings were leadership team this or management team that, and I called it FAMT, and it blocked out the whole of the last Tuesday of every month, and it stood for fuck all meetings Tuesday. And I was really open if anybody asked me what the meeting was. And it stood for, and my CEO roared with laughter. Guys, this is the only way, because the meeting culture in this organization is actually really inconsiderate. This is the only way I can preserve time to do the thinking that is actually what you
Pay
employ,
me for. Yeah.
rather than some of the directing of traffic that is what my days were feeling as if they were becoming. On which note, this is going to feel like a bit of a segue. One of the things that was probably quite a big elephant in the room for lots of people in terms of just diary management and how out of control everybody felt. In most of the meetings that I go into, I bring this.
For
So
those who are not watching on YouTube but listening old school style on an actual podcast, that was a stuffed, very colourful pink elephant. Well, pink, multicoloured.
he's a multicolour patchwork elephant. For those that are familiar with the story of Elmer, it's a cartoon about an elephant that doesn't feel that he fits in because he's so different and brightly coloured, covers himself in mud to fit in, but they all know it's him anyway because of just how joyful he is and the way that he marauds about the place spreading joy. And I bring Elmer into meetings and I introduce him, and I cringe almost every time I do it because it's so cheesy to go, this is the elephant in the room. I will normally name how cheesy it is. I've got better at not cringing, and good stuff happens on the other side of cheese and cringe, to be honest. You can get past.
Most good things are cheese related in my world, frankly.
Absolutely. And I'll bring him in and introduce him and say there will be elephants that nobody is talking about. Depending on the context, I might not know what they are, but you will. Here is a way to raise them. And I will say, you can grab him if you think there's an elephant. I don't think I've ever done it without somebody saying, I don't know if this is an elephant. Or they might not always grab him, but he will get referred to. And there is something in that about some of the freedom that you want people to have in meetings to be able to talk about the stuff that often doesn't get said that I find really useful. So I don't bring many props, but he's a prop that I find really helpful. He's an emotional support elephant if things go horribly wrong, but I haven't found the need to use him for that very often. But one of the things about meetings that I think we sometimes forget is everybody in that room has an equal right to think. They don't have an equal right to make decisions necessarily. There's in most organizations there's a hierarchy, whether you think that's good or bad. Sometimes decisions get pushed up quite often. But everybody has an equal right to think. And if you only hear from the people in the meeting that think the same as most of the people in the meeting, you lose hard to access knowledge. So if you and I and somebody else are in a call and you and I both know all the same stuff, we don't really need us both in the meeting, to be honest, because all of the information is available from you. But this person over here that perhaps can't get a word in edgeways between us might know something really critical, and all we get is the readily available information. So for me, the elephant is another way sometimes of getting that hard to reach information.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about arriving in a meeting sort of mentally prepared as well as intellectually prepared, as it were, emotionally prepared. Excuse me, emotionally prepared and intellectually prepared, I guess, with your previous notes. If you're hosting a meeting, how do you make sure other people, because other people might just, slide in on the seat of their pants from some other meeting, possibly even, I mean, less these days because we're online, but people do have to run around buildings sometimes getting from meeting to meeting. So it might be physically flustered as well as emotionally flustered.
So I, again, would depend on the size of the meeting as to how I would do it, but I would always do a check-in in the meeting. I did something I was working with an organisation on Wednesday this week. I've lost track of the date. No, Tuesday.
Friday. Today's
Friday.
Friday.
It was Wednesday. Uh, at time of recording, it is Friday.
Yes.
So I did some work with a team on Wednesday. I had a little bit of here's roughly what we're going to cover. And the first part of that was the introduction. And then I had a slide with a different variety of squirrels on it
Of
and
course. Why
asked
not?
people to introduce themselves with which number squirrel am I? They do that quite often in that organization, so it sort of works with their culture. What might be distracting me and what I need. And so sometimes just naming school holidays now. So uh, in this event on Wednesday, people who might normally be phones away were saying my 13-year-old daughter is at home. It's the first time she's maybe been at home all day on her own. I want to be able to have my phone out. So we just agreed those kind of ground rules. But actually, if you talk about how you're feeling, you have to think about how you're feeling, which in itself is slightly settling. And if you talk about what's distracting you or might be, either we can make accommodation in the meeting, or sometimes just naming it takes away its power.
Yep.
It's a bit like saying Voldemort instead of he who should not be named. It just took some of the fear away if you're a Harry Potter reader or watcher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I stole this idea from you actually during lockdown. for our team water coolers, we would go round the virtual room and just say, out of 10, where are you at? Because otherwise, the instinct, how's everyone? Oh, fine, yeah, fine, grouchy, exhausted, whatever. But generally speaking, most people will say fine. When you have to allocate a number to how you're, we even got one of our clients doing it on a client meeting. When you have to allocate a number, it either gives you a conversation there and then if people are happy to have it, if that number isn't perhaps where you would hope it would be. Sometimes just naming it is like, actually, no, I just needed to say that, but I'm all right, I'm kind of okay. I'm just, today's not a good day. And other times it's so right, I'm going to follow up later, or the rest of the team might follow up later and just go, things are a bit tough, is there anything I can do to help? So having those, and that's just a number, and a
Yeah.
number is somehow less, you attach less, we had somebody once who said, I'm a solid 6.35. Okay, good. Right, okay. 0.35, and they're like, oh, sun's out. I was like, okay, good. So it's not great, but at least there's a bit of sunshine. And yeah, it just helps to open up those conversations, doesn't it? If people want to, people might just go, I'm 4, and that's all I'm doing. Great. Okay, let's chat later.
And then there can be the conversation about what do you need?
Yeah.
And again, it depends how comfortable people are with talking about that. It depends on the level of psychological safety in the organization, in the meeting room itself. Sometimes what we need is just to be left alone, but there's, if you're in a meeting, you're in a meeting for a reason. So, what do you need to be effective in this meeting, or what do you need from us to get what you need out of this meeting, is a reasonably non-controversial question to ask.
Yeah.
And if somebody goes, just time, okay. But I think the other thing it does, whether they're online or in person, meetings are human experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Though I did join a Zoom call the other day, and the only person apart from me and the presenter were 5 AI note takers. And I
So
thought,
it's not going to be long before people don't bother going at all. It's
well, and
just
then
going to be Notion or whatever it's called,
yeah,
Fireflies.
it was interesting to me because I thought, oh, I'm not quite sure how we're going to get the back and forth of this conversation. And then some of the people joined, I think their note takers had joined slightly before them, but I saw a dystopian future in
Well, soon you will be able to send an AI version of yourself to meetings to present. I mean, it's coming.
yeah, and there may be benefits to that on travel costs. So there's a lot. The lot that will, a lot that AI is already changing about meetings, I think, but they're still fundamentally currently a human experience. And if you don't acknowledge that people all feel differently and need different things, and that's not about turning a meeting into a therapy session or a counselling session, but if people are suppressing how they're feeling, they're wasting energy on that and not thinking about what's going into the meeting. And also, if you suppress that, even just naming an emotion to yourself is really powerful, and it creates a condition that allows you to think better. And most of the time when you're in a meeting, it's because there is thinking expected of you.
Yeah.
So another book that I would recommend, and I can send you links to these, Kathy, and for those that are watching on YouTube, it's a relatively old book, is Time to Think by Nancy Klein. And she did some work on what are the conditions that need to exist for people to do their best possible thinking. The principle behind that being, if you do your best possible thinking, then you're going to make better decisions.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what most meetings are driving you towards, or should be.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like it.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, when you are in a meeting, whether in real life or Zoom, be there. Don't how many meetings have we all been on, and all of a sudden you are getting email replies pinging up from the person who is in the meeting. Hang on a minute, why are you in your inbox? You're meant to be in this meeting because I'm there as well. And that's not helping anybody do their best thinking. And I don't argue, if you are there, be there. If you are there and you shouldn't be there, then you shouldn't be there. Just do your emails. But being half there is kind of the worst of both worlds, because you're probably not paying full attention to the work you're doing, and you're not fully present in the meeting, bringing your best self to that.
And I've definitely been aware of, I was going to say black market, but that's not quite the right expression. Um, the sort of undercurrent that sometimes goes on in meetings where there's a bunch of people on instant messages slagging off whoever is talking at the moment about what utter nonsense this is.
I probably have been that person. Yeah,
And
probably.
it's very human. And there's a point where I think, and you could challenge the person right now on, well, this doesn't really make sense to me. I'm not sure why we're talking about this. All of those things, which are difficult maybe to raise, depending on the nature of the person that you're instant messaging about how awful they are. And it's one of the reasons I call my business conversations that count is I think we duck some of those things because it's
Yeah.
difficult. We don't want to offend people. We value being liked, all of which is entirely reasonable. And I think you can be challenging and kind, and you can uh, actually move things forward a bit more. Like the odd, oh dear, this person's driving me up the wall, probably isn't that detrimental to the world. But if there's just this culture of, well, we're going to sit in a meeting and we're going to be slagging off whoever's up front, nothing good is happening in that meeting for anybody.
No, no.
So, um, you and I both, I know, do the flown
Mhm.
flop.
Yeah.
And one of the facilitators for that, Lorna, uses a phrase that I have stolen, which is if it beeps, buzzes, pings, or bing, or pings or dings, turn it off.
Yeah.
And I've added to that barks or meows.
Oh, well, I can't do a lot about that in this house, but
I know the feeling, but and similarly, when I've had to do interviews or I was doing some press work a while ago, I just had a big sign on the front door that went, "Look, I'm doing interviews. I'm actually going to be on TV," which was very exciting, which is why I wrote it on a piece of paper. Uh, to the postman, please don't knock, just don't get the dogs involved.
yeah,
I know you've done something
I
similar.
have. Yeah, I have got a sign. I've laminated it now, and I will literally stick it on the front door and say, I am. I don't do it for podcasts, I perhaps should, but I certainly, if I'm, presenting to a big group of people who, and, there is no way I'm going to answer the door and several colleagues are going to go absolutely mad. I'll put a sign on the door saying, please, 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 whatever it is, go away or leave it, but don't ring the doorbell, don't knock, none of those things because I'm doing whatever. But I mean, I think for more informal meetings, we are getting better. I joined a prospect call earlier in the week, and the first thing that the chap said to me was, "Just so you're aware, my kids are here. It's school holidays. They're colouring stuff in, but I can't promise that's going to last for half an hour. There may be interruptions." I'm like, fine. And I think, like you say, naming it, because if you don't name it, you're going to be slightly anxious that at some point there's going to be a small hand going, "Daddy, Daddy, can you?" It's not a big deal these days, unless you're on TV. But even apparently on TV, we have, the old child crawling in the background. I think as long as people are aware, that stops you worrying about it, which probably stops some of those things happening anyway because you're more relaxed. So, you know, things tend to be a bit more chill.
And I think so I'd always done quite a lot of remote work. So I worked for international organizations. So back in the days when it was, video conferencing and things, I was used to doing a lot of that. So when COVID happened and the world kind of turned upside down, there was quite a lot of it was quite familiar for me. But if you reflect back, I mean, 5 years ago, it feels incredible that it's 5 years ago. Actually, there was something brilliant about seeing a little bit into people's lives at
Yeah.
times. And I would get to the point where I could wave at the various children because they'd
Yes.
seen the Teams call often enough that they knew that that was the person that mum worked with or dad worked with.
Yeah, and my cat made one of my Christmas cards from a client because he used to pitch up on calls and his tail would, flick across the camera. And I think it's quite nice, isn't it? It is. It's adding to the human element of a
I
conversation.
mean, you've got a blurred background at the moment. I've got a reasonably clean background behind me. I don't think anybody needs to see your knickers hanging off the washing line level of knowing about your humanity.
Yes, agreed.
I think you know there's authentic and there's chaotic, and that's, I'll be honest, that's a balance I struggle to get right sometimes. But I do try to keep, if if I'm in an online meeting, I try to keep things relatively clean, and I don't just mean the conversation. Um, but I've actually had somebody be freaked out. Those that aren't watching on YouTube, I've got two quite big bookcases behind me, and they are overfilled with books. I had a call with a new client about 3 weeks ago, and he was freaked out by the number of books that I read, and it actually really unsettled him looking looking at the bookcase, because I don't really know why it unsettled him. Actually, we did have a bit of a conversation about it afterwards, and he decided that I'd probably be a really good person to have on a quiz team. And I am doing some work with them in November, so it didn't put him off so much. But it was the first time that they're there because it's the only place in the house they fit. It was the first time I've had a conversation where people haven't maybe gone, "Oh, you read a lot of books. What's that book?" or "What are you reading right now?" and just had somebody go, "Oh my God." And I think he wasn't much of a reader, don't really know the reasons why. And I think maybe he was worried that I was going to trot out loads of theory, which I can do if you poke me hard enough, but it's not my first place to go. So that was interesting to me to just reflect on how unsettling it was. It took 5 minutes out of the 30-minute call for him to just sort of get over being freaked out by it. So background, if you want to have the Milky Way behind you, that's a personal choice. People tend to do it a lot less now, but a non-distracting background as much as possible.
Yes, and Nick is in the background. Washing generally in the background is one of my pet hates, and if I'm ever interviewing for a role, that that's kind of the one strike and you're out for me, because I know that if you're gonna turn up with that to talk to me, you're probably going to do it with one of my clients, and I do not want my clients seeing your underwear. Thank you very much. So, and it's so easy these days with the blur. So I normally don't blur. But at the moment, I'm midway through having some work done in my study, and I have, and the only person it annoys is me, but I'm looking at it as well as the other person is looking at it. So I've got bits of painted and bits of unpainted MDF in my background, and it made me twitch so much, even on blur, that I have stuck pieces of A4 paper on the brown MDF. So I've just got a white-ish background. But that's how much it annoyed me. And I wouldn't say I have OCD tendencies, but the first thing I would say about your bookshelves is, why are some facing the other way? Why are some upside down? And I know you and I did have an occasion where I attempted to sort your books out by colour and you nearly had a nervous breakdown. So we all have our own little foibles about these things. But yeah, having a neat background is, it shows that you're professional, I think, doesn't it? And if you can't be because you have to decamp to the kitchen or whatever, blur it. Don't make people be peering, going, "Oh, are they cornflakes? Are they own brand, or are they Kellogg's? What is she buying?"
I heard a description of good manners once is about making other people comfortable.
Mm.
And I'd never thought of it like that, because I probably, when you think about people who talk about manners and etiquette experts, I worry they're going to tell me, which fingers I should be lifting to hold a cup of tea or not, or, not making a noise and not stirring your tea round, but back and forth and all of this stuff. Yeah, it doesn't clink so much. There you go. You can have that
Oh,
etiquette.
well, so yes, again, for those listening, podcasts are so much better for me because my face tells way more than my voice
So
does. I rolled my
I,
eyes or whatever.
so I'd always slightly had this perception about etiquette in some ways, but I really like this description of it about making it comfortable for other people. And I think that's what having a non-distracting background does for the people that you're talking to, because then they can concentrate on you, you can concentrate on them. Again, it's a human experience, rather than peering at. The reason all of the things are upside down or on their side in my bookcase is because I need another bookcase, but I'm trying to resist. But that in itself is distracting, so I may do something about it after this.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, Claire. It's
Not
my
uncomfortable. It's given me food for thought.
Yeah, good. Yes. And the other really interesting thing I find about studies, so mine is being done because the mess was getting to me. And it wasn't messy. You know me, I'm not really messy, but there wasn't really anything to put things away. So there was lots of stuff. And Zoom, Teams, and any other different functions you may use, weirdly, all have different, what's the word?
Ratio, aspect ratios.
Aspect ratios. So you will tidy for a Zoom call and you go, right, I've cleared all my edges of, my cloth and my glasses case and my this and my that. I'm all good. And then you join a Teams or a whatever other podcast thing, and all of a sudden you've got an extra 4 inches either side, and you're like, oh my goodness, I just need to shove everything a bit further to the side. I don't understand it, but it's irritating.
And I recently bought a new laptop and it now does camera work for me. So which is
I've noticed it's slightly freaking me
so
out.
if I uh, lean forward and move back, it will zoom in or zoom out. And sometimes it will send emojis going if I wave my arms around, and I gesticulate quite a lot. So that's something I was in a situation where we were talking about something quite serious, and actually a load of clapping hands uh, shot out into the screen. And I was mortified. I don't know how I did it, but it was a
That's a Zoom thing, isn't it, rather than a laptop thing? Is that not
it didn't happen with my old one. So I
Oh, it's a version of Zoom. So your old laptop probably had an old version of Zoom that it didn't support the new one. Because I definitely remember during lockdown, people are, oh yes, if you clap your hands, you get stuff. I mean, you can turn it off in the settings, which clearly I have. But yeah, and you can make it do hearts and all this kind of stuff. And other people are going, no, it's not working for me. It's not working. It depends what version of
yeah, I
Zoom
am
you're on.
I will be on the latest version of Zoom. But yeah, so there's something, isn't there, about that preparation, about knowing what's in your settings.
Yes. And for me, turning up with your actual name, if it's a Zoom or a Teams, we as VAs quite often, so I will put Zoom meetings in for one of my clients, and very, very occasionally, if I forget to switch accounts, I will rock up to a meeting with his name, and I'm, it is an absolute pet hate of mine because it's just really unprofessional. But again, particularly during lockdown, people, Teddy and Mummy. It's like, no,
Yeah, or your quiz team name if you were one of the people that did Zoom quizzes on a
yeah,
sort of 4 hour basis. But we've moved, the world has changed,
it's
and we
well, hopefully, yeah, yes.
that's
Yes, it did feel like, because like you, obviously I was a remote worker well before COVID. Did feel like we gave everybody a crash course in how to do online meetings for a period of time. It was quite entertaining in many ways, but yeah. So, and obviously, don't come in with your cat ears or your, yeah, whatever. I do that for fun, but not for a grown-up meeting. Um, so we have covered an awful lot of stuff about meetings, turning up, squirrels. I haven't done rabbits, squirrels, elephants. Um, if you want to chat to Claire about any of the issues covered in today's episode, you can find her at either on LinkedIn, Claire Stibbon, or conversationsthatcount.org.uk. And as I think we've covered today, a meeting isn't just what happens in the room, it's what happens first, and it's what you bring into the room. So, yeah, do get prepping. Claire, thank you so much for joining me.
been an absolute pleasure. I know I made a Harry Potter reference earlier, and I'm just going to make another one, which is relatively unusual for me. If you take one thing away, bad meetings are like dementors. They suck your soul out, and it doesn't have to be that way. So just, don't need a Patronus spell if you're geeking out on Harry Potter, but preparation and clarity on purpose and having the right people in the room can make this a much less soul-sucking experience.
Yeah, and chocolate afterwards to recover if it was awful, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you ever so much, Claire. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening. And as always, stay nerdy, stay intentional, and don't forget to bring your meeting elephant wherever you go. So that was my chat with Claire Stibbon. I hope you enjoyed it. For more information about the kind of stuff she does, either solo or with groups of people facilitation, go check her out. She is at conversationsthatcount.org.uk. Thank you so much for listening or watching. I'm Kathy Soulsby, and that was Productivity Nerd, a podcast all about helping you do more of the right things efficiently so you can live your best life. If you've enjoyed it, I really hope you can rate, review and subscribe, all that good stuff. It helps more people find us. Thank you so much.